Righty, hello and welcome to the Creedcast. My name's Dave. As always, thank you for joining us, whether you're listening on Spotify, YouTube, or watching on YouTube, Apple Pods, wherever you're getting your podcasts. We appreciate you being here and supporting us every week as we get closer and closer to the AFL season. We'll get into talking about Port's one official preseason match in a moment. Flag pair 2025? Question mark. Am I overreacting to a single result in preseason against a depleted St Kilda side? Probably, but it's better to win them than lose them in preseason anyway. Kind of weird thought that actually just literally popped into my mind. Some cold opening for Jamie. He has no idea what I'm about to say, but nothing crazy. But as I was saying, our one official preseason match just made me think, and maybe it's my mid to late 30s kind of mind of, and thinking back to preseason competitions of my youth. It is really weird thinking back to how official and regimented preseason was with multiple matches, and they kind of felt like they meant something, and now it's just like we got a 6-period match sim and one official match and then an internal trial at Alberton coming up this week. It is really weird now thinking back to what it was like and now what it is as I bring in Jamie. You're a couple of years younger than me, but is it similar? Is it weird to you to think back now and think of the Ansett Cup and all those traditions, and now we just have this weird Frankenstein's monster of preseason these days?
Yeah, hello, Dave. Good to see you, and thanks for everyone tuning in. Yeah, look, it's not necessarily the Ansett Cup or the Wizard Cup for me. It was more the NAB Cup, but it was still the same competition in its own right. Yeah, yeah, and the year that I remember the most is when Carlton won the preseason. Well, they won the NAB Cup, so yeah, they did win it. And then won the wooden spoon. So yeah, but I know what you mean. Like, yeah, the matches are literally shaking off cobwebs exercises, and yeah, always taken with a grain of salt. Although in that year that Carlton did win the NAB Cup, I'm not sure if they were overhyped that year. I think a lot of people just kind of laughed at how funny it was, because I think we all kind of were aware that they were still pretty crap,
Mm.
and like, how did it happen kind of thing. So no one really took it seriously, but I think you got a financial reward off of it in years gone by. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I can't honestly recall, but I mean, I remember when we won back to back. And I think that was Ansett Cup at that point in 01, 02, I think, or it was 02
Mm,
or 03. It's quite far back to remember, but I remember sitting up and watching them and being really excited. And at that age, it was the first time I'd seen the Port Adelaide AFL side lift any form of silverware. And then it kind of did actually transition into a sustained period of on-field performance, and obviously culminated in a proper a day premiership as it was differentiated back then as day-night premierships. But yeah,
yeah,
it is odd, but it is an interesting one now, as well as we look at the injuries that have happened this preseason, and maybe there's a
for
little bit too
sure.
much clickbaity stuff being made out about it. But it is also a question to be asked about how much load you put on players
Mm.
in
Well, I
match.
mentioned it last week.
Yeah,
Like, there
because
is a lot of injuries, and whether it's a coincidence or not, it still stands out, and you still need to ask the question whether they've got the mix right, so to speak.
especially guys like the Errol Golden ones just come to mind, because it was a real in season kind of injury, like a hard tackle, a body
Hmm.
rolling over on the ankle and fracturing the ankle. And as someone who's gone through an ankle reconstruction, it's really always gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit more watching those
Mm.
particular injuries. But because I mean, those ones can happen in training, but you generally, I assume you're not getting too much of that kind of real heavy situation in a like a player versus player in training. Maybe you do, but it's just that, and that's the thing is, like, all of our injuries. I mean, even the Zach Butters one we'll get to in a moment have kind of happened in training or started in training. The Zach Butters one was
Mm.
inflamed by the Adelaide match sim, but it sounds like it was originated
Originated.
in a
Yeah.
fall on his knee in training. So, and obviously Zerk Thatcher and Savara Gleer and Todd Marshall first was all preseason stuff in training. So, and you need to do you can't just go into the season without any preseason training either. So there's a certain point. It's where that inflection point is as to whether it's just you have one hit out against the team and just hope that you get through it. But because I think you need to have at least some. Like, I mean, all sports around the world have pre-seasons, and all of them deal with injuries. I know baseball, you'll have a pitcher or two every year that'll be trying to get into their rhythm for the year in spring training over there, and
Mhm.
they might do some serious arm injury that puts them out for half of a baseball season, which is 90 odd games. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it happens everywhere. It's not something you can exactly fix, but it is a question to be asked about. And it is funny seeing the AFL doing both the conversation about how much preseason do they play, also what kind of carnival can we make state of origin and Indigenous All Stars all at once? Like, there's this,
Yeah.
which I like.
Yeah, yeah.
All for trying to have some exhibition stuff here and there if it works, but yeah, you as soon as a major injury happens in a game like that, the same talking points will be asked of. But yeah, um, yeah, it is funny. Just thinking of preseason as such an innocent thing when I was a kid, and it was just a given that there was a competition that was going to be played before the season, and now it's like, do we play any games or not? Should we just go into the season? Like the
Yeah,
AFL
yeah.
fan world has changed a lot.
There was a lot of time, a lot more time back then as well.
Mm,
Like it's longer, seasons are longer than they've ever been, and players, I think, have more time off than they've ever had. So whether there's a match conditioning component as in with it as well, or like a, you know, training conditioning component to it. I don't know. Uh, but I forget where I was going with that point, to be quite frank.
no, yeah, I think you made a decent point. Anyway, it is maybe just a conditioning, and then the modern AFL, how it's structured in both the season and how much time off they have, and it is also just such a faster, more athletic sport than it's ever been in the past as
Yeah.
well. So there is that factor to it too, that players are putting, well, fitter than they've ever been. They're also trying to extend, like, put the maximum amount of output that their bodies can give in an AFL game is like just bigger and better than it was in the past. And not saying, there's plenty of great examples of some incredible athletes in the past, but the game overall was just that little bit slower at times because it was just a little bit, forwards could be forgiven for being a bit bigger and burlier, and whereas now even our big tall forwards are these incredible, like, feats of human, gym engineering, so to speak, and how they can
Yeah,
build
yeah,
bodies.
yeah. It's such the unique sport also creates unique athletes as well.
Mhm.
Like they train in such a different way to every other sport. And I mean, you could probably say that for every other sport. It's just such
Yeah.
a highly athletic but dynamic and explosive game. The point that I was going to make before was that, and I've done no research, but my gut feel and the theory that I have, if you look into the statistics, it might paint a better picture, sorry. But I feel that most of the injuries around the league do tend to happen at the start of the season
Mm.
anyway. I'd like to probably look into that a little bit more, but that's just my gut feel. Perhaps because everyone is getting used to the increased training loads and then actually playing against hungry opposition and reacting to that. Uh, but I think, yeah, it's it's just how high this peak is at the moment and the quality of players that are actually out. Like even thinking of our round one game, I heard this morning that Jordan De Goey's knee has bone bruising or something of the like, which doesn't sound promising. And that's just to put it on, kind of bring it back to us and
Mm.
how our future looks in the short term. But yeah, my gut feel for a certain amount of time has been that the injuries tend to happen in bulk, or the majority of them happen closer to the start than the end. The
Mm.
ones throughout the season are obviously tragic in some circumstances, but yeah, that's just my gut feel.
Yeah, it would be interesting to go through and see if there's any. There would be data on it somewhere. It's actually just finding the person who has it and can get it into a collatable form. But yeah, no, it's an interesting point because I'm thinking back and I was like, a lot of major port injuries I do remember are, I mean, how Pepper came back from an interrupted preseason last year and did his ACL almost immediately. So
Yeah,
um,
George was similar.
yeah,
Just on a Port perspective, Hamish Hartlett, his ACL was earlier in the season as well.
yeah.
Jack Watts was
No,
early in 2019.
Robbie
Just
Grace was
thinking of
early.
Port people.
Yeah, and was
Robbie Grays was early in the
yeah, yeah.
season.
Then he
Yeah,
spent the rest of the
yeah.
year out more or less. Yeah. Um,
Those are the more
Matthew
like,
Primus, both
yeah,
times. Yeah.
tragic ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Those are the serious injuries, but even injuries as a whole,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think do tend to happen earlier in the
Some of the
season.
soft
Yeah.
tissues can start flaring up early in the year, and then then it might feel like it progress. You get them again later in the year, but it's often because they're recovering from one that they've sustained earlier in the year as well.
hmm
Um,
hmm
yeah,
Just bad luck. Bad luck is
yeah,
like who draws a short straw this season is basically kind of how it goes. There's that many people playing the sport at a professional level.
mm.
That it's just
It's
who's
one
going
of
to
the,
be unlucky this year? There's always luck and the opposite every year. So yeah.
just one of the many things that like fans like we do this as a leisure activity. Um, and yet we just rack ourselves with anxiety about all sorts of things, like just the fortunes of the team. But then you even when you get into like as you said, just the luck of the draw of injuries. Like every year you go in and going, okay, who could we afford to lose? Who can't we afford to
Mm.
lose? And like the reality is, as soon as you lose even someone that's a depth player, it hurts your depth for if a bigger one does go down. So all injuries matter, but
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
just the stupid things you have to do as a fan to enjoy what I said is a hobby and a leisure
Mm.
activity is
Mm.
to just rack yourself with anxiety at every turn about every little detail of things that are completely out of your control as well, which is wonderful. And one of those things out of our control is Zach Butters, and obviously we talked about this time last week, and again we're recording this on a Tuesday evening, Tuesday March. I was about to say March of 4th of March is when we're recording this one. So this time
March the
last,
4th be with you.
um, so this time last week we just heard, I think an hour and a half before recording, that Butters was going to be going in for an arthroscope. It's obviously happened. Timeline came out last week of 6 to 8 weeks, and now with the latest report, it's 5 to 7 weeks. 5 weeks has him back if he's fit and ready to go. In 5 weeks has him back for gather round, I believe. So that's versus Hawthorn. It's 7, 8 weeks. It's obviously a couple of weeks after that. I'm not exactly sure who's in there. I know that would still have him back before the showdown, I think. But yeah, it's it means that, and we'll get into the match, the review of the match in a little bit. But it means that we get a decent look at what a midfield without Butters looks like for the time being, because we have to. See, look at Jamie's face. And I realize there's not even talking about hopefully the future is long and butterful. But we have
At Port Adelaide,
yeah, at
yes.
Port Adelaide, yes, yeah. Even though I don't want him having a butterful future anywhere else. But yeah, we actually have to just look at what a side looks like without Zach Butters in the immediate term because he can't be there, even though he's still a Port contracted player for the next couple of years still.
2 years, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it is disappointing because I think I kind of said last week, you kind of want to go into the season as fit as possible because you know you're going to get that attrition throughout it. So it is really disappointing that we're getting a little bit of that attrition at the start. But then, as you said last week, the long season, if we're hopefully getting them out the way now and aren't going to have too much more bad luck throughout or manageable luck is what you're looking for in AFL. You're always going to have a few. But yeah, it is disappointing, but it's also, it's an opportunity for the likes of me. Lorenz has been getting a bit of run in the preseason as well, and obviously just gives a bit of a different look to the midfield mix that is reasonably still laden with depth at the moment. But yeah, it is sad news for Butters and us as fans that love watching one of the most kind of exceptionally, uniquely talented players that have graced AFL fields for the last decade. He's a player that makes you turn on a game, and so it does. We've got a few of those, thankfully, and we'll talk about a few of them when we get to
That's exactly
a match
right.
review. But
Mm.
yeah, it is disappointing. I love watching Zach Butters, and the fact that we won't be able to watch him for a few weeks is disappointing.
Yeah, I totally agree. In all my cynicism, I mentioned on my family's group chat or my family's footy group chat, sorry, that sarcastically mentioned that the universe is just preparing us for life without partners. But no, I definitely hope the rumors are not in fact true in that regard. But yeah, look, hmm, it's sad, but thank fuck it's our strongest line on the field. Like, yeah, we definitely have the players to cover for it. And look, to call a spade, St Kilda were pathetic on Saturday,
Mm.
and our midfield took full advantage of them. That's not going to happen every week. Like we mentioned off the top, preseason is preseason is preseason. So take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, look, I'm just thankful that we've got so many good players that can cover for the talent that is Zach Butters. And when he's fit and ready to come back in, we'll be better for it. Which is scary if the weekend's result is anything to go by, which time will tell.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably, I guess, a good time to start getting into the weekend result. Port Adelaide, obviously, with a very, very dominant win over a pretty, as you mentioned, poor St Kilda side. I think it was, I actually don't have the scoreline. I think it was 14-9 to 7-7 or something along those lines.
That's
Um,
exactly right, actually.
that's a damn good memory.
Yeah.
That's mad because I knew that the final was like
Footy
93.
math.
Yeah,
Yeah.
93 to 49. So I'm like quickly going, I think it was 14 goals. So then, yeah. I was always good at the six times tables in school because of footy and everything. That one I could get out straight away.
Mm.
Yeah, and
And as a secondary, I always found myself aligning seven times tables as well for like one goal one or like
oh yeah,
even an even ledger. Yeah, so I know exactly what you mean.
yeah. Sports math in general is really, really where the strong point game for me. But yeah, a strong preseason win, which as you kind of said, St Kilda were quite pathetic. I mean, that first quarter is just
It's a training run.
the pressure they just didn't apply enough pressure, and whether it
Yeah, it's
was
a training run.
yeah simply because I think it was mentioned on the telecast they had at least nine players out there that were 25 games or less experience, so it was a very youthful
Yeah,
side. So it could be whether they just couldn't apply the pressure or because of just simply not trying, or it was just genuinely so many players that just don't know still learning the craft at the basic level of playing an AFL game for St Kilda at the top level. Um, yeah, it's hard to know from their side, but I mean the facts remain that we were just far and away better than them, which it's hard to know where to place that in preparation for the season. Again, we're just going to get so much more of an idea of where we're exactly at once we play a side like Collingwood for premiership points away from home. It's like a very, very good test straight up, which I'm
hmm
excited for, nervous for, but excited for. But we can only play the preseason game that's in front of us, and St Kilda they do want to try and prove that they're going somewhere. Despite some of the doomsayers out there, so to go out there and professionally kind of dismantle whatever that one, not that we had to dismantle much because they just did it themselves, but to do it in that fashion and kind of start and working on a few things that we're trying to implement for the season, a little bit more dynamic ball movement going inside 50, which was really, really fun to see. And we got to see a lot of that from, particularly from some of our new recruits, as well as obviously Connor Rosie had a day out, and we'll get into some of the stats in a bit. But
Certainly did.
um, yeah, looking forward to some pressure act talk in a little bit. But yeah, like we can only play the team that's in front of us, and for me, I was just really impressed with how a few of the things that we have implemented, including Finlayson down back, had a really good day as well, and here's the ball
Yeah.
movement coming out of the back. Well, we still were a little bit sloppy at times, but we still ended up with almost 80% disposal efficiency, which I didn't like. I was surprised to see that, but as a team, but we were pretty good across the day.
Yeah.
There was just a few.
79.9. Yeah.
Geez, it was close. So
Take
yeah,
that.
But yeah, overall, I guess, before we get into some of the stats and some of the individual performances, just what was your general view of how we played and maybe some of the things that we're starting to try and do and implement as we move towards this, slightly adapted game plan. Whilst also, I still think there's a lot of signs of us trying to stick with some things we're doing well last year as well.
Yeah, well, Chad Corns did the post-match press conference, and he mentioned that they were treating it as their round zero, which is makes a lot of sense. Although St Kilda might have gone in with a different outlook on what they wanted to get out of the game, like playing all those pretty inexperienced players. Yeah, we certainly played as if it was somewhat of the real deal, obviously with some interchange concessions and extra players and whatnot. But yeah, we made them look second rate. Yeah, whatever happened last week in Mount Barker doesn't matter anymore, and we're going to make top four again, as far as I'm concerned.
I like that.
I'm not overreacting, but no, yeah. It was just good to see that the game plan that they're working on kind of be displayed for us all to see. Like at least we, with the opposition being so hapless, it allowed us, the fans and the wider football community, to see kind of what we're aiming for this year. And as we all know, we're not going to be afforded that luxury every week. But we've just got to do it against the majority of teams the majority of the time. And if that's the case, because we've certainly got the talent for it, that's pretty exciting stuff. But teams are going to try and shut that down. We did overpossess it a little bit at times. And it is funny because I feel like Port Adelaide has been here before with a fast-moving game plan, and that Achilles heel was over possession. Obviously, a lot has been spoken about Charlie not being there, and that game plan of bombing it to his head is kind of being spoken about a lot. But this kind of game plan that they're trying to display comes from a time gone by, just obviously a bit more modernized, a decade on. Yeah, but I love it. We loved it back then, and hopefully it can give us an edge and our players flourish playing that game plan.
Yeah, and early signs for me, just looking at, trying to find a point of incision into talking about some of the players within the game plan, but I guess first three to talk about, as far I think is just a good place to start, is the three new recruits that were playing a decent role in the first half. And I mean, Lukosius coming in and having a decent kick is no breaking news. We were like, a lot of people think of him as one of the best kicks in the comp, but the fact
there was one from like the center circle or something that was just on a platter, and that kind of epitomized
it was also
what we expect.
It was a dart as well. Like it fucking flew
absolutely
off his boot and just like trajectory like a fucking.
Oh, because that was the one that Rioli spilt and made look.
It almost
and then he ended up check siding it in the end.
Like, it's almost like Rioli was like watching the kick come through and like, Jesus, this is a fucking good kick, and just like and took it to the chest, but was still thinking about the kick and just like,
he's like admiring it while it's in midair, and then it's just like, oh, fuck, I'm gonna mark that.
Hit him in the bread basket. He just fucking dropped it.
How good's that service? Yeah,
just like I'm not used to that. But then he still just picked up the ball, did a little dance, and snapped one, like, just because that's what Willie Rioli does. He's very good at the football. But Lukosius with that kick, because I think Lukosius kind of, I can't remember if he sold a bit, but he ran like a few steps and then just a dart of a ball, and his goal, one of his goals was still rising as it went through. He kicked it from pretty short. Not too far. I think it might have been 25, 30 out, Lukosius, when he kicked one of his, and it was still rising as it went through the post. Like he's actually got a booming kick as well as an accurate kick. Which, having just not watched a whole lot of Gold Coast, a lot of what I knew about his game style was like, he's a good kick. So I was like, okay, but like actually now getting to watch him forensically as we do as sport fans, it's both the direction, placement, and just the fact he's got so much power and he has kind of harnessed it and knows how to utilize it. Like he can, do a shorter kick to advantage and put the height and the hang time on it if it needs to be. But he knows how to, like, those penetrating kicks, and we did a few of those as well. And the commentators noted it. I'm trying to think of who did it, but there was a few where they went to the top of the goal square, but they didn't just hang it up there. They actually darted it in there for a player to
Yeah.
try to kind of lead onto
Well,
it.
it was at Jared Healy, Lee Montagna, David King, and
Kelly.
Kelly Underwood. That's right. I mean, they're all glowing in their assessments, but just on that, what you were talking about in terms of where the ball was ending up, it's no surprise that we kicked 14 goals, 9, because we were getting such good looks. And again, that's not going to happen. Like, defense is going to be a bit tighter than that. I don't expect St Kilda to be that good at all this season as a whole. But it just goes to show that with a different forward theory, getting better looks tends to mean that you're converting more of the time as well, which imagine Adelaide Oval if that comes to fruition the majority of the time.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because there was actually a couple of goals that, like, Mitch blazed a couple that we expect him to kick.
Yeah, absolutely. Shanked him.
HORNE-FRANCIS had probably the
it was
worst kick that he
terrible.
might ever have of his career because he is
Ever.
generally
Yeah,
very, very good.
yeah.
And they kind of made mention of, like, these players aren't used to probably, like, I mean, they do play and train.
Oh, the local suburban
local
Victorian
windy,
grounds.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I think one of them was just like, it's windy, windy suburban grounds in Melbourne. And I think one of the guys was like, I think slightly misunderstood the point, or was just whether he was trying to be funny, but it almost sounded like he just went, "Oh, there's no wind in Adelaide." Like,
yeah. Well, that's exactly right. It's like
the point was
Jason Horne-Francis played for South Adelaide, for fuck's sake. Like, it gets windy down there.
But it was more about just the fact they were playing in a ground they don't play too often because, if you play in Adelaide, you're kind of a bit more comfortable still. You're going to Melbourne playing in a suburban ground at, St Kilda's home for their home. So, it's just a little bit of fish out of water and a windy day and probably just the fact that it is still a practice match. Like, talking about practice. So it's just like it is
practice.
Yeah. I can't imagine HORNE-FRANCIS ever, knock on wood, because he's probably going to fucking do it to me this year at some point now that I've said it. But you can't imagine, like, because he's such a beautiful kick usually. And same with George. Like, George did kick a couple, but I think he kicked a couple. But
he did, yeah.
The bag he could have had, albeit again for a preseason match, wasn't there because he just shanked a couple, and HORNE-FRANCIS as well. So yeah, we're talking about our finishing being pretty good, but it could have been a little bit better as well. But again, there was mitigating factors there, and that's what one of those things.
Oh no, yeah, 1 goal 2 he kicked, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But it's one of those things that I don't even worry one bit about because HORNE-FRANCIS again was brilliant. He's just hit the ground running in preseason. He was one of the best when he was getting involved in the match sim against Adelaide. Obviously, if it wasn't for Jai Simpkin, who had deserved the medal in the Indigenous All Stars game, like JHF was second best on in that game.
Yeah, agree.
He's incredible in multiple facets of the game, whether it be in the middle or he's exploits as a goal scoring midfielder or just being able to hang down forward as well. And again, today on Saturday, his delivery, his ability to bust through the line. Like, he had one centre bounce where he just busted through and almost got it on it. Like, he just kind of lost it but he almost was trying to do the kind of like what Zach Butters did, I think, against the Kangaroos last year. Just kind of burst through and kick one. Like, HORNE-FRANCIS looked like he was going to try the same move, and so he's just hit the ground running. And some of his
we'll know that will come.
Yeah,
you can guarantee it.
Exactly. He's kind of set himself at that his base level is very, 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 very good. And then and then he can just ebb and flow into the game based on like where his fitness is at, and he's still developing. Like, this is still a kid that's 20. I think he's 21 still. So
he's early 20s, at most. So
he's
there's a lot of joy to come.
He's at least 4 years away from starting to enter the age that we start talking about midfielders hitting their prime. So that's kind of the level he's at. He's at a pretty good accumulator of Brownlow votes level at this point, and so if the trajectory continues, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you think back to Ollie Wines was talked about as a future Brownlow medal winner right from the start when we drafted him.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
4, 5, 6 years.
People know
to reach but it still took him a long time to reach the consistency of performance. And I just from memory, like I remember Ollie Wine's early career, but I just feel like HORNE-FRANCIS is already above, like just some of the magic things that he does. He's a better user of the ball already, I think, than Ollie's refined his ball. But and it could be recency bias on my part too.
Because I think Ollie's first 5 years were immaculate for a first 5-year player.
Oh yeah. No,
and then it was the captaincy and that injury just caused a big trough in his football career. But once he recaptured that momentum, fuck me, so good.
And he's been again looking good going into this season as well, by the way.
Yeah, well, he was second best amount of disposals along with JHF, funnily enough. And second to HORNE-FRANCIS, who just had an outstanding game. I wrote in my notes that he basically run the game, like for both sides. Like he was the one dictating terms. Yeah, HORNE-FRANCIS.
Yeah. I mean, we might as well talk about him now because he obviously, it's crazy that we kind of took a while to get to him actually, but it kind of just started with, and I'll get back to it. We'll talk about Joe Berry and Joe Richards in a little bit as well. But we should talk about HORNE-FRANCIS and give him his roses because he had, and it sucks that it's only a preseason game, but he kind of showed that it was a great time to have the performance as well as we're worried about what Zach Butters, and he kind of said, all right, I'm the captain. I mean, he was going to be the captain anyway.
I am the captain now.
Yeah. And he had a 39 disposal performance, 7 tackles, and most importantly, 25 pressure acts to lead the team as well. Again, the narrative of HORNE-FRANCIS, because we talked about it a bit at the back end of last year, there was some, at different times last year, there's some questions about his captaincy and his legitimacy of his claim to be captain. You and I never entertained that at all seriously because we think that he was doing a lot of things people go unnoticed. So that's why, again, I wanted to bring up that he kind of did all the magic stuff that we want out of HORNE-FRANCIS. Like he had a couple of shimmy shakes to the hips and behind over the shoulder handballs to players running past and executed them perfectly.
Quintessential.
Yeah, he kept he was exerting pressure on the opposition, but when he had the ball, he was so aware of everything that was going on around him. He was evading tackles, and look, that can be
game slowing down type stuff.
It really did feel like it did slow down when HORNE-FRANCIS had the ball. Like there was even one point, I think on the half forward flank, he kind of did just stop and almost do the Maradona. Like there's that great Maradona. There's a great picture of Maradona in the World Cup in '86, I think it was, when they were playing England, and I think it's England. And it's just like the way the viewpoint from the camera is that it's Maradona with the ball, and there's just 5 England players around, looking at him, but they just don't, and this
stunned.
And it's just they don't know how to attack him. And Rosie kind of had this moment in the game where he kind of took the ball, was shimmying, shaking a little bit, and looking for a handball. And the Saints defenders were kind of there and were exerting the pressure on him as far as being close enough in proximity, but no one actually, because he kind of kept his dancing shoes on, and just so the game was just
he did.
Yeah, it ran through him, and he looks fit and raring to go for the season, because he had that kind of performance that you just this guy's fine, this guy's just fit and firing and ready to go. Did all the all the stat lines we expect from Conor, and I think he ran at an incredible 89%.
89%, yeah.
Have 39.
Well, it was just a fraction under 90. 89.7. So,
because you and I always talk about your disposal efficiency gets more impressive as it stays high when you get to close to, if you're doing
30, and he's close to 40.
Guys that have 25, 30, That's what I'm saying. Yeah, 25, 30 disposals usually we're like, oh yeah, if they're at 75%, they're pretty good. And he's at fucking 90 basically, and he's at 39 disposals. as well as tackles and exerting pressure on
Yeah.
the top pressure act player on the field. Equal first for defensive half pressure acts as well, because he was popping up in defensive, taking marks and helping springboard the
He's a
attack.
midfielder. Yeah, he's
Yeah, like,
everywhere.
but like there's some players that do just delineate that. Like players of his ilk can often just delineate that task to someone. He like
Yeah,
that's the,
and not bear the same amount of criticism as
exactly.
well.
Yeah, so he does like again. That's why I wanted to highlight the defensive half pressure acts, and he was top score involvement player as well, I believe. He had 10 score involvements, the nine defensive half pressure acts, and 25 pressure acts total. I think the only other player with nine defensive half acts was Logan Evans, who had nine for the game total. So, but yeah, just
Mm.
Connor Rosie again with and I think I actually got to go scroll back up because I've got to didn't organise my notes as well as I usually do and getting back into the rhythm of things. But yeah, he had 8 clearances for the game too, which I think was almost led the team. I think it did.
Great question. Let me see. Yes,
Yeah,
it did.
six for
For
JHF and
six,
one
eight,
for
six, four
yeah,
is the top is the podium, and Connor Rosie is number one.
yeah,
But yeah, I had a thought to myself too, just about his year last year and how well, there was not everyone, there was a group of people who basically expected to be a guy in the earlier side of his mid-20s as a first year captain to be like prime Tim Ginniver. Uh, all the while he's had a kid and got married and whatnot, and yeah, it's like it, like a kid, one of our youngest ever captains, like in his first year, and yeah, supposed to be a superhuman. While we also provided the evidence that he did have a pretty good year, in his own right. So yeah, hopefully this is again like the game plan. Hopefully this is a great sign of what's to come this year for Connor Rosie, because he looked magnificent, quite frankly. And like I said, he was running the game basically in conjunction with Jason Horne-Francis, supported well by pretty much everyone on the
yeah,
day.
yeah, and he topped it off with a goal on the day too, which is fairly
Yeah, pick the pocket. That was
yeah.
lovely.
So kind of like what you want from a player like that, if he can have games like that, pop up with a goal every couple, a goal every game. But a lot of midfielders don't actually average a goal a game, and Jason Horne-Francis was one of few that did it last year in the entire competition. So, and he's probably going to be the one that will do that more. But if Connor Rosie's having games like that, he's probably going to pop up with a goal as well, and particularly the way
Yeah.
playing the game.
I mean, a rosy goal is one of the joys of the game, like the
Mm.
joys of watching football. Like if he's around the goals, it's generally fantastic to watch. Uh, Not forgetting that he started his career as at the AFL level as a forward, and
Yeah,
yeah, led out goal kicking in his debut season.
I remember him kicking. He kicked his debut. I'm trying to think it was his debut of his second match. There was one match in that early season. Um, I still remember shooting out a tweet on back then the Creed. Well, that wasn't happening, so it was just on my personal account. But I said something about
Yeah, nice.
who even was our last number 20. Like I was just throwing some shade. I
Yeah,
was throwing
that's
some shade
right.
at Wingard at the
Yeah,
time, but and
yeah, it
I
was still
love
pretty fresh.
I loved Chad Wingard, but yeah, it was a little bit fresh. And yeah, that's what you do as a fan when a new person comes in wearing that Guernsey number and has an immediate impact. You're going to just have a little bit of fun with it. But
Mm.
I think he must have kicked a bag of 3 or 4, could have even been 5. I don't know.
He
He
kicked
had a
five against Brisbane early doors.
that might have been it
I
then.
was on I was on a cricket trip in Wallaroo, which was fucking awesome. Just on a side note, but yeah,
I've done a
watching
Bucks.
watching
I've done
it in the Wallaroo Marina, like Cooper's Ale House.
I've done a Bucks weekend in
Yeah,
Peru, and yeah, it's a good spot for a
fantastic
yeah.
part of South Australia for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, he's obviously, and he doesn't kick too. Like I mean, he does kick a fair few just run of the mill set shots. Obviously, like he gets it.
Yeah, and he's fairly accurate in that regard as well, which is good.
But kind of on your point, he does seem to always just pop up and kick the real like flat, like the fun goals that get you up out of your seat kind
Mm.
of stuff as well. Like he's just always popping up with one of those snaps. Like he had some really good ones, like that game against Essendon last year. That he had probably his best, maybe his best game of his first year of his captaincy was that gather round match against Edgy Essendon. And yeah, he kind of he looks
I've got about
right
that.
back in that vein of form now, which unfortunately, he was there was shortly after that his season got derailed for no only for a short time, but it was a little while for with the hamstring issue and kind of the
Yeah,
rush back of that originally, and then the sit down for a few weeks with that. So then it
it's a
kind of
good point.
yeah, and
Like
then it
he was
kind of
interrupted
yeah, he didn't
pretty,
have a
yeah,
yeah
unfortunately
yeah
last year.
yeah. So yeah, he looks kind of like he's in that kind of form again. Again, just the numbers all over the place, all over the shop were just exactly what we want to see from the Connor Rosie we know. Even taking the captaincy away from it, that's just what you want to see from him. But the fact he does that as
Yeah,
captain
yeah, yeah.
and leads from the front, both in a stylistic way, as well as some of those underlying things that, again, that some people just don't notice. I don't think because of the way he plays. Because some people, there's still some opposition fans that think he's a little floppy diving, prima donna kind of player, and unfortunately, it's just like because
I
of the
think
way
that's a
he,
misguided opinion,
oh, it absolutely.
in my opinion.
Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one, but ours are
Mm,
right.
mm. It's how
Um,
educated they are. As
Yeah, and they say that without it looking into his numbers, whereas we look into his numbers and go, well, he's often up there. He's most of the time, if he's had a decent game and been in the game of footy and there's been no lingering effects of injury or anything, then he's up there in tackles, he's up there in disposals, he's up there in pressure acts, he's up there in, he's usually having a decent day. His disposal efficiency is usually reasonable, even if it's a day where the entire team's shit. He kind of
Mhm.
just sometimes falls into that average of whatever the team's doing. If it's just a team dysfunction thing, but if he's having a good day, then considering the role he plays as well in both, generating forward thrust and all those things, and to have, I mean, again, St Kilda were shit, didn't apply enough pressure, gave us a lot of room to move
No.
the ball and do what we wanted to do with
Mm.
it. So that disposal,
Even if you dial it back though, to take that into account,
yeah.
even if you take 10, 20% off of it, it's still pretty fucking good game.
Mhm.
Um, so like, yeah, we all know preseason game, February, March premiers, match simulation against Adelaide means nothing, but we're gonna be minor premiers and win the premiership or whatever. But yeah, just trying to dial it back realistically, you'd still be happy with that if you shave a few numbers off of it. Um,
Yeah,
but you
look,
can't because that happened and you can't change it, and it was enjoyable.
yeah, really, really enjoyable. Again, it just sucks that I think it's genuinely one of the best, kind of just some of the fun moments that he did, like again, like those shimmy shakes and handball over the back and all that stuff. Like, and surely like he'll try that in the season, and occasionally it may not work, and fans will be frustrated. But it's like, fact is, you have to have these players that are willing to try these things because when a team gets good enough, it's those kind of things that break through the pack and end up getting you into that premiership. Well, playing for it,
Yeah,
maybe not,
yeah,
but
yeah. I always
having the
believe that X
magic.
Factor
Yeah.
sets, yeah, 100%. X Factor sets teams apart.
Mhm.
Like a lot of the AFL is very similar, and that's why it is very even. Like a lot of football teams are doing a lot of the same shit. So X Factor can just give you that edge, whether it be minor or major. I've always believed that. And yeah, players like Connor Rosie and the like of his ilk set teams apart on any given day. And if you can really get on a heater as that type of player, you can just help your team succeed that much more.
Yeah.
And the more you have, the problem with X Factor though, and it's not a reflection on Rosie, but some X Factor players are inconsistent, but that's why they continually play because you know what they can provide on on their day at their best. And yeah, that's like crack to people
Mhm.
and you yearn for it. But I'm not saying that Connor Rosie falls into that basket. He's got X factor and he's fairly fucking consistent, to be honest.
Absolutely, he is. Yeah, yeah. Talking about players that think, yeah, I just started thinking about. It's hard to not think about it at times. That Mo Salah for Liverpool this year. It's just that's a player that every team would love
Yeah,
to have, and he's
yeah,
the
I
X
know.
factor,
And
and he's the X factor that's
yeah,
breaking
I
it apart.
totally agree.
And
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying,
Obviously, I agree.
yeah.
Why would I disagree? And for those new, welcome. Thank you for joining us for season 2025.
Mm.
This is, in fact, a thinly veiled Liverpool FC podcast as well as a Port Adelaide Football Club podcast. So sorry, not sorry to those who support other football clubs. And I'm sure you're listening thinking, I really fucking hope Liverpool drop the bundle. But look, it's enjoyable at the moment.
Yeah.
Much like, yeah, Connor Rosie's game and being the X factor for Port Adelaide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing is like, yeah, Connor Rosie, Mo Salah, same person, maybe. I don't know. But they certainly do a lot of because Connor Rosie's ability to influence at both ends of the field as well, and be a team player as well as just do the flashy things as we kind of just touched on.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you and I love about him so much, and what we try to defend a little bit against some of those uneducated opinions that come out about him based on just what people see. Because when a player, he is a flashy looking player, but there's a lot of substance under the surface there. That once you dive into the numbers and actually just watch his game more closer, you really start to appreciate some of the things he does. Because you noticed on the weekend too, beyond the flashiness, just all the hard running and stuff that he was doing, and again when he didn't have the ball, was in a position to put pressure on the ball carrier on the other side. I mean, I got mentioned in the telecast at one point. So I'm trying to find about because the disposal numbers just as a team were incredible. Like we had 173 more disposals as a side, I think, than
Yeah, and most of those were uncontested possessions,
yes, yeah. But I
which,
think
yeah, the difference is stupid.
it is stupid. It's wild that we ended up losing the inside 50s, but that's mostly from the second half anyway. But we still won the tackle count, which is insane. And at one point, they kind of noted that,
Yeah,
Terry, that we were up 100 plus disposals and still leading the tackle count. Because, I mean, for those listening, like, you should, if you're winning the disposal count by that much of a margin, you should just by virtue of that be
yeah,
shaped in the tackle count because you're the team in possession. So you should be the one getting tackled more. If you're leading the tackle count and the disposal count by three figures, then that's kind of it's an epitomis of the poor effort that St Kilda are putting in essentially. So again,
yeah,
yeah,
shocking.
it showed, but it's again, you can only play who's in front of you, and we kind of every thing that St Kilda gave us to work on, we utilized the opportunity to work on it.
It's not necessarily like we've got a full complement either ourselves.
Exactly. Well, our injury list is short, but it's significant players on it. So yeah,
Mm.
and I guess that's a good segue into talking about the defensive work we've done, in particular with one Jeremy Finlayson having a day out down back with his ranging boot.
He certainly did.
Good marking, good even a couple of contests that he couldn't quite get the mark in. He just was in the contest and helped bring the ball to ground rather than be an easy mark for the St Kilda forwards. And then obviously his distribution was actually quite. He generated a fair few forward thrusts as well. I've said forward thrust in this podcast a couple of times, and as I mentioned, Jamie off air, been a bit crook. So I'm like, my brain is just and I think that's just the word vomit I'm using, and I just every time I say thrusts, I just feel a little dirty about it. But so I'm sorry if anyone's listening in the car.
Forward thrust.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah.
okay. Just think of chicken run. Thrust.
Oh, it's good accent by you.
Thank you.
But yeah, Finlayson 29 disposals, a large number of those by foot. 13 marks, 400 meters gain.
Yeah, a great defensive contested mark too at one point in the game. I think it
Yes.
was in the first half. But yeah, Yeah, and like you mentioned, the defensive, not prowess, that's the wrong word, but his involvement, his defensive involvement, particularly
Mhm.
spoiling and just getting in the contest, and that's the type of mongrel like Jeremy Finlayson is a bit of a hot-headed player. We all know that. Everyone knows that. So if you can channel it, you're only going to benefit from it himself and us as fans in the football club. And yeah, defensive efforts to do them hard but fair, you need a bit of mongrel about you, and
Mhm.
like he obviously has that. So it's not like he's going to shirk a contested aerial ball. So yeah, it was great to see him get involved in that regard. And then he's spent enough time in the middle as a chop out ruckman that we all know how handy he is by mostly by foot, but just in general, he's a fairly smart footballer. In the games that in the majority of games he's played well, you get a better understanding of how his mind works in relation to the game of Australian rules football. He's pretty clued in when his head's in the right spot.
Mhm. He's had an interesting career too because he did spend some time down at GWS, which up at
Mm.
GWS, which is why everyone kind of knew that he had that ability. But then he had a 44 goal season in their run to playing and losing the 2019 Premiership, I think it was, against Richmond. So he's had that significant time up forward where he probably and
Mhm.
to be fair, he came to Port Adelaide probably thinking he's going to be that, but his role was in flux last year with a little bit of form fluctuations, and some of that probably came from being moved around a little bit. But this
And it doesn't help that your spleen gets nearly cut in half either.
that too, yes, yeah, and then um, and he just looked a bit forlorn, frustrated, and unsure
Yeah,
of his
100%. I'd agree with that
unsure of
for
his
sure.
football last year.
Yeah.
He looked rejuvenated just in the spring in his step
Mm.
um, on Saturday. That was probably the one like beyond just watching and enjoying what he was doing down back. And I don't know, I think it might have been Jared Healy actually that said, "Oh, maybe he's Dan Houston." Like again, we're not replacing Dan Houston. We're just trying to work out a way to play. But
We're not replacing Giambi.
yeah, exactly. Moneyball is just going to be the theme of the podcast this year. Uh,
Yeah, this year for sure.
but he
Because I feel like the forward line is a bit
it is
Moneyball
as
as
well.
well.
Like we're kind
For
we're
the
kind of
yeah, we're
changing.
not replacing Dixon. We're just replacing his output.
Yeah, we're replacing him in the aggregate. Exactly. Um, um, yeah, there's not 50 feet of shit though. But like, I don't know, crosstown rivals might say differently, but they're always wrong, so it's okay. But yeah, like Finlayson, yeah, beyond the things he was doing, he also had 7 score involvements, which is pretty handy from a player ranging out a
Yeah.
halfback and whatnot. So that's kind of what you want from him as well. And I think
Some of those chains he began as well.
yeah, there was a lot. There was one trying to go back to my notes because I know I noted one that I just really enjoyed. But again, my notes are a little bit all over the place. But there was a couple of really nice ones. I'm looking for. I always write Finn in my notes. I'll find it eventually. But yeah,
Yeah, I refer to him as Finn too.
yeah. But beyond all that, it was just his the spring in his step was something that I really just enjoyed, just as a fan of football and a fan of
Mhm.
the humans that play football for our football club. Um, you want to see every success for them, and being again, he's a footballer. His job is to play football for us. But again, you do always think about what's going on in his personal life and with the Kelly's battle with cancer and everything, that he's had an extra mental load that not many people in his profession have to deal with, in such a direct way of having some people deal with, everyone's dealing with their own battles, but a young wife dealing with a terminal illness is not something that anyone ever expects to deal with. So
Mm.
yeah, it made me feel good watching him. I don't know. He's had his personal battles with some controversies last year, which he's accepted and moved on with and owned and hopefully learnt from as well, which is what we wanted for him at the time. So to just see again, there's such a stark contrast with the football I saw running around on the field last year to on Saturday. Um, I didn't realize just how much I'd noticed how frustrated he looked last year. I think we all noticed, but to actually see him enjoying football again the way he was on the weekend made me realise just how much he had fallen off a little bit last year. And again, that's great for us because I think you did say last week we don't want him being the linchpin of our defense because that's probably going to be a problem going forward. But it could be. I mean, they kind of talked about in the commentary. There's examples in the past of players that have just moved down back, having been up forward and had a really good. Obviously the Western Bulldogs last year were talking about it a lot with Rory Lobb, kind of reinvigorating.
That's the most recent example.
But, as Port fans, we've talked about it before. Chad Corns moved as a 40, 50 goal forward almost. I think he was kicking 30 to 40 maybe in his early career up forward. But having a decent start to his career up forward, but then he got moved down back and became an All-Australian centre-half.
And what a fantastic year that was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, he's wearing that jumper that's in your background and winning flags. So... yeah, that wasn't too bad actually. Yeah, might have to go for that.
Yeah, for those listening, I've got a 2004 away strip as my background.
Yes, I kind of forget that.
While I sort out my new house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic nonetheless.
Yes, yeah. And yeah, so while we're not predicting anything, not trying to overreact to it, it's a promising performance to kind of put a marker in the sand or in the early part of the season as to what you can provide the team. And it actually did kind of provide a lot more defensive stability than I was expecting. I mean, again, at St Kilda, who knows? Again, the big test is going to be at the MCG in 10 days time or whatever it is that we're playing, 11 days time, maybe it's the 15th. Yeah. But I feel a lot better about it than I did pre that match. So that's
and
because Asava,
absolutely. Yeah. It's good to win.
But might be. But
what was that? Sorry,
I think Asava might be back training this week. I think from what I remember.
Yeah. Chad Corns said that he was running, and I saw a vision of him running at training. So it's promising signs. But we mentioned that in the match simulation, which again take it even more with a grain of salt than the game against St Kilda on the weekend. But we mentioned how that tall forward line was actually a bit different to how other sides are structuring up. And while having an Aliir Finlayson tall combo may find us exposed against a side like that, if we're not at our best across every line, we did say that most sides are a bit smaller in nature. And like even Collingwood, like they've got three tools, but they're more your medium tools rather than your out and out key forwards in Myercheck, Membry, and McStay. So, is the thought of three tall forwards a little bit misguided? And can we cover it with this iteration of our defense? And just to reiterate a small point you made before, like I did say that if Finlayson is there for the whole year, we've probably got concerns, but credit to him. He, like in that game on the weekend, for what it was, he played the role and he played the role well. So if that's going to happen and we're playing sides, and another thing we mentioned was the start of our year is fairly a fairly generous portion of the season in terms of how the fixture looks. So if we can take advantage of that, it'll set our season up fantastically well for a Zach Butters to come back into the fold and a bit more of a settled lineup, hopefully, barring any fresh injuries or serious injuries. Touch wood, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Again, it's the season's always going to have a bit of attrition, but it is we just touch wood that there's not too much more as we get into the season and we can settle in and get players back rather than too many more go out. But yeah, and there's even I think I was reading Logan Evans. I was reading the text transcript of some of his media stuff last week, and he kind of mentioned about guy like his development as a player, but just the general, idea of some of those, even those guys just trying to play as tall, like play taller down back as well to try to help cover. So there's kind of
Yeah.
this plan of like, we're a little bit undersized maybe, but we're all going to try and do our part to um, play as tall as possible and help out the guys that are actually, the key tools. But yeah, and again, as we've said many a time, the ball use in the middle of the field kind of dictates how easy it goes back and how much of the opportunity, because you see when I think St Kilda did get a few opportunities to get forward on the break or when they turned us over, there was one period I think in the third quarter where we had perfect possession of the ball, just handballing it around. We
Hmm.
kind of tried to handball through traffic and it eventually spilled out and the kick went forward. It was kind of Jack Higgins running into an open goal more or less, and so it's just kind of those kind of
Yeah.
things that there's nothing a tall defense can do for that because it's just like that is
No.
turning that is going against the flow of play and is one of those ones that we just it's all on you because we had complete control of the ball and we just handballed ourselves into trouble by trying to do what you need to do, which is get the ball forward. But it's probably you just at that point sometimes need to just switch the play sometimes. So if you've kind of handballed it around on one flank and they've built up their block there, then you've just got to find a way around. And we just
Yeah, and that's
and we tried
yeah.
to go through it and turned it over. So that's the kind of stuff that
Mm.
we're going to have to.
That's the Achilles heel, like I mentioned before. That's what we
Exactly.
have to be careful of. I think it was brought up today on one of the radio shows that, or maybe yesterday, sorry, that other clubs have a smaller disposal to goal rate
Mhm.
than kind of what we displayed in that one game on Saturday. And I think, yeah, the average for a couple of other teams was like under 20 disposals per goal, and we were kind of just north of 30. So it's definitely the Achilles heel for a handball heavy game plan. But
Mm.
hopefully this time around we can refine it and take full advantage of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Wanted to get back to just I want to mention them while they're on my brain again, but I thought Joe Richards and Barry, but probably more so Richards in this one, displayed a really kind of like he's got obviously kicked a goal and um, looks assured of foot and general again just body language doctor in the house. Just the way he carries himself is just very like a quite confident.
Unassuming.
Yeah, unassuming but quite confident and kind of like and it's
Yeah, he
funny.
works hard.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that was that first goal of the game, like you mentioned. It's all it was born out of, putting pressure on the opposition and getting a free kick not far out from goal.
yeah. He was his ball use was good as well and his hunt. There was one I'm just looking for there we go. There was a ball that came into our forward 50 and it was kind of like Lukosius got the ball, gathered the ball, tried to get it out, and it went into traffic. Like I think he handballed it out and it went into traffic. And then Richards was involved. Both Richards and Lukosius were kind of involved in getting the pressure on the ball and getting it out. I think DBJ ended up kicking his foot, like a goal, which was our fourth for the day. But it was kind of just this little moment where Lukosius kind of crashed through, really trying to like take possession of the ball and get it out, and then Richards got involved as well, and just a really nice little moment of the two recruits getting really heavily involved in the forward 50 kind of pressure, you know, defensive acts of the forward 50 that you need to do to keep the ball in. And
Hmm.
ultimately ended up in, I think it was DBJ kind of snapped it towards goal and it went through. And it was a goal scoring effort on their part, like a score involvement for them, and the fact that they kind of got involved in the play and just wanted it more than the St Kilda, like, because they kind of like just kind of made it theirs. They were kind of involved in a few. I think there was an end-to-end one. I was just looking. I finally found the one that I was actually talking about with Finlayson. It was one like Finlayson kicks out from defensive. This was in the first quarter, kind of out of the defensive goal square. I can't remember if they kicked a point or if he'd just taken a mark down there. I think it might have been a mark because they didn't. They only scored 1 point for that quarter, I think. So, but yeah, Finlayson kind of kicks it to Rosie, who goes back to Finn, and then launches it towards the midfield where it's kind of a bit of a battle for the ball, but Richards ends up with it and then just kicks to a really nice, kicks it to like in front of Rioli and just gives,
Hmm.
but just in the only position that Rioli can kind of run onto it nicely. again, it was just
Mm.
like, it was a nice one that Finlayson was involved in. Finlayson and Rosie, like the two of the guys that we've spent some time on today, both of them involved, like Rosie getting back and helping launch that, being involved in the little chain with Finlayson to get the launch forward to then, Richards through the middle and just a beautiful kick out to, and again, there was a lot of good kicks to advantage in our 50, like eyes down. I think
I was just about
Logan
to,
Evans had a
yeah,
nice one. There was a few,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, go for it because there was a lot of good. The forward 50 movement was more dynamic. Good, like,
Yeah. One thing I noticed was while we were trying to lower our eyes and on a leads, at times where if we felt that there wasn't a genuine opportunity there, we were kind of dropping it into portions of space
mhm.
for forwards to then create a contest or to try and outplay their defensive opposition with the ball in
Georgiades did it
dispute
once
on
for
the
a nice,
ground.
like, I think Georgiades for his first miss that should have been a goal, I think was
Yeah.
a good Lukosius kick, kind of for to work to Mitch's advantage, like because Mitch was then able to work
Mm.
his defender under the ball and then take a mark, and it was just again like one of those exactly what you're talking about. I think.
Mm. Oh yeah. What I was more thinking of was just dropping into space and letting them work on
Oh yeah,
at
yeah.
ground level.
Mm.
Um, but examples like you mentioned are probably next generation type forward entry. Nothing revolutionary, kicking into space
Yeah.
or kicking it to someone's advantage. It's just something that we haven't been accustomed to writ large in recent years. So it's nice to see, and hopefully we see it more often because you're playing the percentages quite simply
Mm.
to playing football that way, kicking it to a forward's advantage, or rather than kicking it to a contest, kicking it to space inside your forward 50 because chaos ensues, and generally a talented forward line will take advantage of that still, which I'm keen to see more of.
Yeah, and kicking into space kind of allows the forward line to spread still and not and like generate opportunity. Whereas if you
Mm.
and like not that
No surprise we're filled with small forwards, dynamic small forwards, who
yeah,
can take advantage of that type of thing.
and a few decently athletic. They like Georgiades and Lukosius aren't lumbering bigs like Dixon. They're reasonably athletic blokes as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, there's some athletic ability across the lines down forward, and then Lukosius and his delivery and so like I mean we want him in as a forward to kick goals, but I think the more we see and it's not no surprise to us either, but his ability to move up the field and be some of those a link player in the forward
Mm.
50 entries as
It's
well, and
another thing we spoke about last week.
yeah,
Like forwards are generally get pretty high at times, so you'll definitely see him pushing up high and being the one to enter 50 at some stages throughout every game this year, I would assume,
yeah,
if
I'm
he's on the park, touch wood.
yeah, I am fucking stoked to watch Lukosius play and watch that foot. Like I'm
Mm.
already into it. Like just that ranging boot of his is just
Yeah, well, and we
tickles
spoke
me.
about it last year in our preseason shows then, like the Port Adelaide A recruiting staff and B development coaching and coaching as a whole, more often than not, get the best out of players that we bring into the club. Not even our recent history, our history for large portions of the Ken Hinkley era show that. So absolutely. It doesn't always pay off, but a guy like Jack Lukosius in good form with his set of skills is a tantalizing prospect, to be quite honest.
Mhm. And again, it's even just development of moving. Getting that kind of performance out of Finlayson down back as well is like
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
if he's at a preseason and they've been working on this stuff and it sounds like they're talking about it more in media appearances now. It's like Finn. I think Logan Evans again was talking about it on Monday. So yesterday about Finlayson working with them, asking questions, being really invested in
Mhm.
because Evans was kind of saying, he's a veteran, particularly compared to Evans, who's been in the system what 8 9 months. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
he was
2 seconds.
trained on, but yeah, he's in his first full AFL preseason at the moment. Whereas Finlayson's been around for 8 9 years now, I think at least. Time is a flat circle since COVID for me. I can't like fact it's already been 5 years since that season. It's funny, like with the not funny and thoughts with everyone in Brisbane and Queensland and hope everyone's and everything goes well up there and it's not as catastrophic
Agree.
as what some of the weather reports are saying. But stay safe up there. But just the with the postponement of the some of the opening round matches and a lot of
Yeah.
harkening back to COVID and the uncertainty, and it's just crazy thinking that was 5 years ago. So yeah, Finlayson has been around 8-9 years. It feels like he still hasn't been around that long, but then it's been 5 years since COVID, which feels like yesterday at times.
Mm.
So um,
And he played in a grand final the year before that.
exactly, yeah, the 44 goal year or whatever it was that he had forward. So yeah, it's crazy how time works at the moment. Um, but yeah, he's talking about. I was trying to work my way back to. I was trying to remember what my point was, but it was about Evans talking about him working with them, asking questions.
Hmm.
And he's a veteran in particular compared to Evans, and yeah, so it looks like they have been very working on it more intently than we maybe were first led to believe. With the injury issues and whatever. So yeah, again, a good shout out to the coaches for kind of working and the coaches and Finlayson himself for putting in the work to. Because I'm sure it's not like something you want to hear when you're a guy
Hmm.
that's been wanting to play forward and have an impact in that role. Is like, we're going to try you in this way and see what happens. And, from how I can see, again, body language doctor, but how he carried himself on the weekend and performed, that he's taken
Hmm.
the challenge with both hands and said this is, and wants to help Port Adelaide play a successful brand of footy and has found a way that he can at the moment. Obviously, the proof will be in the pudding of the season in its length and totality as to how consistent he can be across the season and in helping out in whatever way he needs to, dependent on the injuries of the others. But again,
Yeah, when it's not going well, which it's bound to at some stage, that'll be a fairly interesting insight as to how he reacts in that situation and the team around him. But we should keep moving. But just quickly
yeah,
on the new recruit side of things, I do think that Joe Richards, they're going to be packaged together all year, probably for their whole time at Port Adelaide. But the two Joes, out of the two Joes, I think that Richards acquitted himself more consistently across the four quarters. Joe Berry, I mean, one's a mature aged player as such, and one's a freshly drafted player. So Joe Berry, he kind of worked into the game a bit more for mine, but I don't think he disappointed in saying that. And I still kind of expect him to play round one due to, I think, something that you commonly say in regards to Ken Hinkley and his affinity for playing fresh players or freshly drafted players early in the season, if not like always round one,
mm,
particularly. So I do see him playing round one because of that a little bit. But yeah, I think Richards probably takes the chocolates in the bout of the Joes.
yeah, the battle of the Joes. Um, yeah, he had. I think he had one. There was one nice kick in particular. I thought from Berry at one point. Yeah, he just didn't. He didn't quite impact the game as much. But again, it's yeah, the youth of it, and Richards is just. It is interesting, like hearing about his past as well, because they mentioned in telecast about him working in schools, and I always think that people that work in roles like have experience in roles like that do just you have to develop to work and be successful in any teaching or vocation of that nature. You have to develop a
Mm.
calmness and a problem solving
Yeah.
capability to work and a problem solving capability and working with a team of people as well as people that maybe don't want to be there or whatever. So there's a talent set that comes with that as far as your mental makeup, which I think is really good for and kind of goes with what I was saying about just how he carries himself. I thought Lockie Jones was okay again. Like I just like he took a couple of nice track back marks and just little sign again consistency and moving in and out
Early
of the game.
signs
Yeah,
look good for Lockie.
yeah,
Yeah, I was thinking that too, watching the replay of the game. Don't want to heap too much pressure on him, but also
yeah,
we're kind of expecting a little bit of a lift in his fortunes as a player at AFL level. So good signs early. There is going to be somewhat of a squeeze on selection for round one, albeit our key positions stocks rather are a bit depleted. When we ran through our best 23 and what lies around that, there is still going to be a squeeze for spots, and it'll be interesting to see if he plays round one. I probably suspect they'll fit him in,
Mm.
and I just can't help but think how much he has to offer at his best as another year on, a mature player, cracked 50 games last year. I just hope that he can scratch, well, not only scratch the surface of his capabilities, but really tap into it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's we're talking about a player that was, and we were just talking about the COVID year. He was drafted in at the end of 2020, so he's this is what, one, two, three. Yeah, he's in his fifth season, so he does. This is kind of the point that he needs to start. Again, not wanting to put the pressure on him, but he's at the point of his career that he has to actually start nailing down a spot
Mm,
probably if he wants to.
mm,
And we all think it, and all think and see even in this preseason that he has the skill
mm.
set. It's just about putting it all together. Um,
He took time to go to America with JHF, didn't he,
I
in the
believe,
off season?
yeah, I think they're
Yeah.
the ones that.
So it shows a level of commitment in
Mhm.
where he wants to get to. And obviously I genuinely hope he does because it's a fantastic prospect
Yeah,
for our
yeah,
team.
absolutely. Wanted to make a note of Jordan Sweet's set shot. Um,
It was a fantastic forwards goal
It
for
was, and
sure.
we because we kind of we it's kind of bookends the review because we started off early off in the review talking about the wayward shots of two of our more reliable kickers, and Jordan Sweet has been reasonably reliable. He just clearly doesn't have as many opportunities, but it was an incredible move. Like he just knew exactly where he needed to put it, and just I just watching how it shapes through the shapes through the posts with the wind and everything. I was
It
just
was
like,
beautiful.
fuck, that's some gorgeous shit. Like that's just yeah, it's just the stuff that
Yeah.
gets your groin tingling a little bit.
Yeah.
That's just how much I love footy as well. But yeah, it's just that's the kind of stuff that you just what like, and yeah, it's set shots. It's not great outrageous snaps or even what Willie did later in the game with his dance moves and whatever. But it's just like the fundamentals of footy when a player just executes a set shot and knows exactly what he has to do with the wind and all that stuff. It's yeah, it's beautiful to watch. So I was just like, geez, that's good, mate. And Sweet,
Yeah.
had a decent hit out again with a decent amount of hit out. Soldo kind of played a
I
bit
was going to
as well.
mention. Yeah, yeah. Sweet looks fantastic. Like he looks in great shape. He looks big,
Yeah, he
lean, mean.
did look.
Um, yeah, but I did want to just quickly mention that Soldo, there's a lot been made about him and his off season, but I thought he actually played a pretty good game
Yeah,
to in his own right. So business as usual, like they have all been saying the whole time, and even around the trade period and whatnot. Business as usual. He's obviously been committed to training, and look, he'll probably start in the Maggies, but I thought he played well. Sweet's number one for me though.
yeah. No, Sweet's absolutely number one. But if Soldo can remain fit in reserve, that'll be a handy. Just because again, the PTSD of seasons where as Scott Lycett's body broke down, and we just didn't
Yeah,
really.
we're good in that
Yeah,
regard.
those
Yeah,
games we were
we're
running around.
very good in that regard.
Yeah, because Pal Pepper would. I just don't want to see Pal Pepper taking a bunch of hit outs again like he did down in Geelong a few years ago. Just some of those setups we
Yeah,
had to
yeah,
run
Ollie
with when we
ones.
had. Yeah,
Yeah,
just I don't want to see that again. So it's nice to see, and obviously Vicentini signed on for a couple more. I can't remember if we touched on that, but it was just a 2-year contract extension or whatever, and he is injured at the moment. But again, there's just that there's a little bit more calmness in that situation all of a sudden with the recruitments we did.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
as much, as it has kind of flipped on its head in the fact that Soldo we thought was the number one guy coming in, but Sweets fought and taken his opportunity when Soldo went down, which is great. And the Jordan Sweet story is wonderful. But yeah, he looks a little bit bigger. I think it was mentioned in the telecast too, but for some reason on the weekend I just really noticed how much like Georgiades has filled out a little bit and just he's still a slenderer of
yeah.
he has
He's a mobile medium forward.
yeah, but he does just
He's
have a little
getting
bit more.
thicker.
Yeah, just a bit of bulk to the arms and his and which will help
He
in.
wants to be the man. He said it. He wants to be the man. So
Fucking love it.
yeah,
I love
yeah.
Georgiades as like because he is a bit of a goof around the club. It seems like there's some of those behind the scenes of photo days or whatever when he's just being an absolute menace. Um, I love that stuff. So yeah, I'm fully into him being the man, and yeah, certainly the way he worked his defender under the ball for one of those early shots was yeah, I like. Yeah, Mitch is going to be um, you know, when he's back in stadiums and not having to deal with random Arab and wind or whatever, like he's going to be fine. Like he didn't miss him by much. It's just they kind of shaped. He just shanked him slightly, went left or whatever, and just yeah, shaking off the rust kind of stuff that I'm not worried about at all. But yeah, is there anything else you wanted to touch on from the game? I mean, there's not. We could do deep stats. Deep.
Nah, look, honestly, because St Kilda was so poor, there was a lot of stat padding, so we could go through the whole side. But look,
Yeah,
yeah, it was a good game all around. Don't really have many more points. One just kind of interest in regards to our game plan, I suppose, to finish on is that it was quite obviously pedal to the metal type stuff. And I do want to just caution, well, my mind particularly to the fact that it may gas us out if we are balls to the wall at every single juncture of every single game. Football doesn't generally work out that way, but I'm just conscientious, and I'm sure they would be too, that while it's very pretty and looks good when it pays off, yeah, I don't want to get to a point two-thirds, three-quarters of the way through the season and we're gassed because of it. But it'll be an interesting watch just to see, what mix they play of fast versus controlled game plan.
yeah, and that might have something to do with there's games against certain teams where we kind of just set up a little bit differently, and you kind of have to battle in the trenches a little bit more. It might just be a little bit of oppo watch and take your opportunities when you can't. Like, I guess that's just footy anyway. But yeah, and it might have just been on the weekend. They needed to, they kind of tried to, the match was weird because it was, changing so many players in and out. They were like, this is our one opportunity against proper opposition before the season starts. Maybe we need to go balls to the wall for a bit here and just and kind of see get the footage in the box so we can go back and look at it and see what we did. Like when we try this, what does it look like? What can we do? What mistakes are generated from it? What opportunities are generated from it? And what can we take from this footage? So there's probably a little bit of let's get some data here and try this a little bit and see what works. And then from that, they kind of glean what you can do to try to control the match a little bit more. And maybe that's what they maybe trying to do. Because did get some moments where they did try to control the ball a little bit more, and then they end up working their way into trouble, which is again like that Achilles heel kind of thing, because they do set up well behind the ball, but then sometimes you just handball into trouble or whatever, and let that one slip out the back. But by and large, they didn't allow too many of those opportunities. There was one,
yeah,
there was one
it'll
moment,
be one to watch.
There was one where they did go forward. I don't know if it was Higgins that was down there again, but he was right. It was a ball that was kind of going to the boundary, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, Higgins is onto this." And then suddenly, like, or it might have been one of their younger ones actually, but then Lockie Jones just races into frame and suddenly overtakes the St Kilda player and ends up beating, and the ball ends up going to the line. But like, commentators at one point were like, "Oh, this is advantage St Kilda," and then Lockie Jones just fucking like he forget how much closing speed that motherfucker has.
He does.
Yeah. So again, another little plus point to what he can do down there is he can just chase down a ball that the commentators like, oh, advantage St Kilda, and then suddenly there's Lockie Jones coming through like Superman, right, like spinning around the planet, just like racing through it, faster than a speeding bullet. Commentary note: I thought, and apparently it's a concerted effort for the umpires to kind of like lock in on the 15-meter thing. At one point, Jared Healy late in the game goes, geez, they're letting 15-meter ones go a lot. And I at that moment, I went, I've been noticing him whistling a lot. Like, I was like, am I watching the same game? Like, was I just noticing it more? Or like, I thought...
I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, no,
that's a great point you raised.
It's just... and I think Montagna actually said, "Oh, they've whistled a few." Like he kind of just goes there, and Healy's just like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't know. I just thought there'd been a bit more
I don't
lenient
know. I
today."
fell
But I
asleep.
there was one where I was like, "No, that was 15," but they called it against it. Like they called play on. I think Boak. I think it might have actually been when Boak kind of cut it inboard.
Just before,
Might have been
yeah,
from
just
the
before
coaches.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And yeah, maybe it wasn't 15. I was like, oh, that's a pretty good 15. And like what I understand is 15 from previous years. And if they are trying to lock in on it more, but yeah, they did blow the whistle a few times. And then Healy late in the game was just like, oh, they've been letting him go a lot. And I was like, fuck, what do you expect him to blow? Like, does he expect a whistle to blow for like 30 of them a game? Like, I'm, um,
Yeah, take what you
not a
get.
major commentary note. It was just one of those things where I'm just like, you have those moments in games where the commentators say something and you just go, wait, was I watching the same game or like?
And then they get hung up on it generally.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Thankfully they didn't because I think Montagna kind of chimed in and went, no, they've whistled a few, so they kind of just the conversation fizzled out and they went on to something else. But yeah, it was just a little slight note on that, but otherwise, yeah, a great game. I mean, we were up by 62 points with 12 minutes to go. Kind of petered. That was, I think, at the point when we kicked our last goal. Petered out from there. They kicked three. I think they kicked the last three of the game, including two of them in the last 4 or 5 minutes. Junk timers mean nothing. We'd put a few players on ice early in the second half with the likes of Willie and Mitch, who were major parts of that focal point up forward, up early on. So all's well ends well as far as preseason goes. Internal trial this week. So
Hmm.
I haven't even asked you. Are you going or still
Probably
up in the air?
not.
Probably not.
No, yeah. Yeah, I may be enjoying another on is it Friday or
Yeah,
Saturday?
Friday at 5 p.m.
I'm hosting family for dinner on Friday, so
Nice
we'll be missing that one. But
family
yeah,
day.
hopefully it's a good game, keeps the ball rolling, and we go into round one, which we'll preview next week. Yeah, with a bit of hope.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking for. I'm heading now. I'm finishing work a little bit earlier and popping down to just have a couple of mid strengths and watch the internal trial. Just an excuse to go to Alberton again, which is nice, and just see how the boys look in one more opportunity before we get to the big stuff. So looking forward to talking about round one next week. To close off though, the main man of basically sports media in Australia at this point. But
Yeah.
obviously a close tie for us as Port Adelaide fans as well in KANE Corns. You brought it to my attention pre-recording, and I thought it'd be a fun way to finish off. He's announced his top 50 players in the AFL entering 2025. So I'll let you take it away. Obviously, we've got four in there, but how do you look at this list as a whole? And you're happy with the inclusions from us? And do you think they're kind of fair about their placing in the list? Um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can understand them. I think Kane Corns is a bit harsh or harsher on Rosie than some. He
uh-huh.
kind of leans that way, puts him a bit on a pedestal. But just for the listeners and the people on YouTube, thanks for tuning in, by the way. Aaliyah lands at 42. This is from a Port Adelaide sense. Connor Rosie at 34. JHF at 20, which is interesting. And Zach Butters at 9, which probably doesn't surprise too many. Some
Mm,
of the noteworthy people in the list: Dacos 1, Bontempelli 2. He's got Isaac Heaney 3, Jeremy Cameron 4, Petrarca at 5 to round out the top 5. So, look, it's probably like Kane Corns has played football. Generally, these types of things are coming from journos. So,
mm,
football at the highest level, I should say. Um, there's a lot of good players in that list, I must say. And look, we're pretty well represented. No huge surprises there. We're one of the winningest sides in the competition over the last group of years. Geelong's got good representation. Sydney, all the people that you would probably think would make a top 50 are probably in there. Their placings in the list is fairly elementary.
mm.
Um, because at the end of the day, if you're a top 50 player, you're one of the best two players in any given game of football, pretty much. So, um, yeah, yeah, where you're placed doesn't really matter. Mate, I mean, that's probably not 100% correct. if you're at the point at the end of that list, like a Dacos and a Bontempelli, you're pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
And yeah, you deservedly so. But just to bring it back to a Port Adelaide point of view, Aliir, I can totally understand. And Aliir at his best, like we mentioned last week, particularly the second half of the year last year, and what he's shown over a great period of time at Port Adelaide, he's one of the best defenders for a couple of reasons in the AFL. Rosie, obviously one of the best footballers in the AFL. JHF is going to have a fantastic season, and Zach Butters is already featured prominently in Brownlow votes. So Brownlow counts over multiple years, that is. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. I mean, maybe I'm just being harsh on KANE. I would probably just slip Zach Butters one more spot myself, but that's really, really splitting hairs and possibly a bit of bias as well. It's hard to argue with the ones he has ahead of Butters. You know, and KANE's a great forward. So, I mean, you know, Lockie Neal at 7, you know, 2-time Brownlow medalist and just won a flag and has been a consistent performer for, you know, 6-7 years now. Cripps just won his second Brownlow medal, so it's hard to argue with that. Petrarca, it's probably maybe surprised us a little bit because he had obviously his year last year.
Yeah, it's hard to
Marked by
gauge.
injury. He didn't have, you know, the impact of previous Petrarca years. So is he a top 5 player? Like he wasn't, you know. I mean, it's hard to litigate what he could have done if he hadn't had an injury interrupted season, but yeah, and he's probably, you know, Melbourne have just fallen off in the last couple of years. So it's also like if Petrarca's 5, then like, because where actually, that's probably a good question. Where's he got Clayton Oliver even in this list?
Kane Corns has got a bit of a gripe with Clayton Oliver, so he probably isn't,
Yeah,
to
no,
be
he's not.
honest.
So, but
Max Gawn is, but
yeah,
yeah.
but
And look, based on last year, and I suppose this is based on multiple years, not just
it
last
is.
year, but
There is a
last
lot
year
of,
would
you take
probably have
all the data you
weighting.
can. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And look, Clayton Oliver probably, well, not probably, he definitely found himself out of the best 50 players in the competition last year
mm.
by far. So
But then Petrarca
he's
wasn't
got
in
to
that
he's got
group.
to prove it again, so to speak, and particularly in Kane Corn's mind with an axe to grind in that regard.
Yeah, I guess that's my point. Is Petrarca wasn't, you know, it was a he wasn't a top 50 player last year by virtue of the fact he just couldn't play enough. So like
True,
kind of
very
like where
true.
I'm at too
Yeah,
is just like why how does like and again I love Petrarca. I think he's a seems like a great bloke. Love what I'm not much of a cook, so I don't
I
get
literally
just but
cooked Greek-inspired smashed tacos from his website tonight for dinner.
love that.
So
Well,
he's a
not
good
bad.
lad. They
Yeah,
were tasty, pretty healthy too. So
yeah.
yeah, um,
He's one of my favorite players
nothing
to watch.
against Petrarca.
Yeah, but it's just like, how does Petrarca get ahead of Patrick Cripps, who just won his second Brownlow medal? Like, that's just my little. And
Good point.
this is
Yeah,
purely me just having some fun
yeah.
with the list. And I do find it quite funny that he's got Connor Rosie number 34. Who's at number 35? Sam Walsh. Like, it's just like.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. That's so good. Oh, he would have, and you can just imagine when he's kind of writing this down on paper, he's got a wry smile, just like bit Beavis and Butthead,
Yeah.
you know. Oh, surely someone brings that up
Oh,
this
yeah.
year.
Surely. When he does, what does he do? Show Kingy a couple
Like,
of times. Like, Kingy's
like
done.
a kingy, yeah,
Yeah.
fireball twice a week now. So
Yeah.
yeah, surely someone's going to save that. He's not on the Sunday Footy Show anymore, so
Yeah, yeah, no, he's got to find that.
yeah.
He's got to have new areas for him to be picked apart. But certainly someone's going to bring that up, surely, because that is. I mean, like, I don't think he's
It's a
deliberate.
little
He
bit
just made sure
petty.
to sandwich them
Yes.
together, but he's probably gone. They're in a similar spot, so I'm just going to make sure that Rosie's just like, you know,
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there ahead of Sam Walsh.
Or he could have, you know, played the soft keep Carlton happy and put Walsh ahead of Rosie.
Yeah,
He's just stuck to his guns.
but
Yeah,
and to be fair,
one
we've
spot.
all like that talk has kind of
I view Rosie as the better player right now.
yeah,
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 Walsh can't take a trick, but
yeah.
that's some footballers' lot in life.
Exactly. So like, and the whole thing has always been litigation's always been about what was the better pick, and it's like, well, at this point, Rosie's, you know, had a better, you know,
Yeah,
touch wood, better career injury wise, and has set himself. He's the captain of the club now and is having 39 disposal games, albeit in preseason games. But
Yeah.
if he's had some of those,
In what will be a premiership year. Yeah, we all
yeah,
know that.
exactly. So overall, it is a.
And the coaching and recruiting staff are disgraceful, quite frankly.
Oh, geez, I've been blocking most of those out. If people that aren't aware,
Yeah, it's
I've been a
time to
bit,
sign off for the
I've
night,
been
I think.
crook for the last week, and I've been using my mute button a bit over the course of the podcast to make sure none of those coughs are caught. But one of them got away from me. But yeah, it's a fun. This is kind of the fun of the start of the season, is we get to do this.
Yeah, that's it. Go take a look for those listening. I found it on 7AFL on Twitter.
I'll put the link. I'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah,
of Kane's top 50. So if you haven't heard about it, and you want to have a look, I mean, you could just Google Kane's top 50 like I did, and I found it pretty quick. But it'll be in the show notes as well, for you to look at if you want to have a look. So, it's the fun. Like, this is kind of that giddy excitement part of the start of the year. Is everyone's 0-0. Soon to be a couple of teams that aren't, less than expected again. Thoughts with those in Queensland and the impending cyclone up there. So good luck with everything, and take care of yourselves and your loved ones. But yeah, it means that we've got less footy this weekend. Obviously, just the Sydney games going ahead, which has my brother very devastated because the Wiggles were pre-match entertainment for the Gold Coast match. So I think he was looking forward to watching that. But hopefully they rebook them for whenever that game comes around again. But coached a couple of games in Sydney this week. So but most of us will be 0-0 going into next week, and full of excitement and hope and everything that comes at the start of the football season, including arbitrary lists of top 50 players of whatever, like, of people's opinions. And to be fair, Kane's done a pretty good job. I was just having to have a pick for the sake of having a pick. But it's good fun. I love this time of year. I love footy. I love every week of the footy season as well. But as we'll find out, there'll surely be weeks where we don't want to turn up and do the podcast, like, just because of
bound to happen.
Yeah, I think probably the worst week last year was maybe the Brisbane game. I think that one was just like a hard one to turn. I mean, we love it's a good therapeutic thing. Like, I love doing it and turning up for it, but it is just like when you're preparing for it and going through the stats, it's just like everything's terrible. But this time of year, it's just all pure excitement, and I love it. So yeah, next week we'll come back. I'll mention a bit about what I saw at the internal trial, but there won't be any full review of an internal trial because, it's
and it'll probably be a little bit of looking forward.
Yeah, and what we're going to do next week as well is we'll finally announce who won our awards for last year. I apologise that hasn't come sooner. It's just we got the end of year of last year got away, and we just decided to put it at the start, just near the start of the season. So we'll do that. Then we'll kind of look ahead at the fixture and just like kind of actually have a look at game by game and just kind of feel out how confident we are with each game as an individual entity, and then see how it shapes out at the end of the episode as to how we're feeling about the season as a whole. And that'll kind of be the structure of it. So it'll be a kind of a mini preview of the fixture as well, as we look forward to a Friday night match next week, which kicks off our season in earnest. So yeah, we're only 10, 11 days away from Port Adelaide football.
You can feel it.
Points as well.
You can certainly feel it.
Yeah.
Can you feel it?
I can feel it in my loins. Oh, but
and that's all from the Creed. Hold me now, cast.
Yeah.
Dingo and the baby.
Send me coughing again in a sec. That's about time to sign off. Love it. I'm so excited to get back to footy. But yeah, good fun talking about a nice win on the weekend. And can't wait to get back next week and be looking ahead to no more, next week's the last episode we do without premiership points in the bank, or games for premiership points in the bank, hopefully more often than not, with the points coming home as well. So can't wait to get
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And before you sign off, obviously, for those new, for those old, social media, Twitter, _the Creed, Instagram, _the Creed. If you want to beforehand, just search for Creed with arms wide open, etc., feel free to do so, and then head to _the Creed or under _ the Creed. a like, follow, give us a 5-star rating on any Spotify's, Apple podcasts of the like. That'll help us out. And support Dave, support the pod on Patreon at Creed. You know, we're excited for another year. Went good guns last year, met a lot of new people, a lot of support, which was fantastic, and excited to do all of that again this year, and grow the community a little bit more, and get a little bit better at what we do for everyone out there. So yeah, jump on board, send us a message, comment on YouTube, Twitter, whatever it may be. And yeah, hopefully we can catch some of you at games this year.
Yeah, absolutely. If you ever see us around, feel free to say good day. It's happened to me a few times, and it's actually how Jamie and I met. So it's like, yeah,
that's exactly right. Yeah, that's 100% right. It is.
So and then
Dave, myself, and the Adelaide Convention Centre car park.
Yeah. It sounds sketchy, but it genuinely was great to meet you there.
It does.
It's ended up in a great friendship and a podcast now. So, it's wonderful, and couldn't have said it better myself. Get around all the socials and leave likes wherever you can, and helps grow it. And we appreciate the support and genuinely do. I know a lot of podcasts, and I'm sure they all do appreciate it, but we genuinely, when we say it, it is, it's humbling that people listen to us yap about Port Adelaide footy and talk about it, and genuinely do get something out of how we talk about the game and appreciate it. So love your support and love all of you, and can't wait to get into chatting Port footy in proper premiership season terms real soon. For now, nothing much more to say than calm the fucking Ports.
See you next week.